Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. Real ones know that my drama videos used to be more in a get ready with me style. Recently, I have been doing them more in the formal video essay format. Kind of a rough day today. Involving taking my cat to the vet, as you can see. Need a little bit of a hangout with the girls vibe, if that's okay with you guys. Which is very fitting because today we are going to be discussing some TikTok drama. For those of you who have been following along in my Gothic horror series, I do have one more video planned, but I've uncovered some information that makes me want to spend a little bit more time on it. So that'll be next weekend, but it'll be worth the wait, I promise. And so in the meantime, I thought we could chat about what's going on over on TikTok with Haley Pham's book, Just Friends, and one particular review that has people talking. So Haley Pham used to be more of a lifestyle content creator and has since made a pivot into more book style content. She recently has been making a lot of content about writing. You might be wondering why I use my pinky for this. It's because my nails are so long that if I use one of my bigger fingers, I usually get a little bit of the product into my nail, but my pinky is usually short enough that I can get away with it. These days, she makes a lot of content about books and reading, and more recently, writing. She has been in the process of writing and publishing her first book, and she has been sharing that process with her audience. And the book in question, Just Friends, is set to release in March of next year, I'm pretty sure. There are a few creators on TikTok who got a hold of ARCs. And across the board, I will say reviews are not the most positive. I have yet to really see somebody be super positive about it, although there's definitely a range. Some people have just kind of said, yeah, you know, it wasn't the best. And some people have been a lot more harsh. Which brings us to the main character of this story, which is Ilana. She goes by Ilana's Library on TikTok. She is one of the people who got access to an ARC of this book. I didn't explain that earlier when I said ARCs, but they're advanced readers copies. So the book is not actually out yet, but some creators have gotten a hold of them, and Ilana is one of them. And it is safe to say she was not a fan. And this has reignited the age-old conversation on TikTok. I need a powder brush, I'll be right back. About whether or not it's possible for a review to be too harsh, and if that is possible, then when does a review draw the line? And I, much like with many of my drama videos, originally wasn't really gonna make a video about it because I feel like I have waxed poetic about this subject so much. You guys know how I feel about this. Reviews are for readers. Making art for the sake of making art is very different from making art and trying to make money off of it. And if you're putting your art out in the world wanting to make money and people are going to pay their money for it, then you have to be prepared for people to have feedback because they paid for it. So they have a right to have an opinion on it, right? And interestingly enough, a lot of authors who complain about bad reviews, the way that they complain about it often is a little bit of a face first into the point and you missed it sort of situation, where they will say, well, but if you give my book a bad review, then somebody might read that review and then decide that they don't want to read my book as a result. Exactly. Reviews exist for readers to make decisions on what books they want to give their time, attention, and money. Books cost money. I mean, the library exists. Always remember the library exists. But for the most part, books cost money, right? People have a right to research whether or not they want to spend their hard-earned money on your book. And if their research ends up with them feeling like it's not worth their money, then that's their prerogative. I want a little bit more blush. How does it look to you guys? I feel like it's very subtle right now. I'm usually a lot of blush kind of gal. I'm gonna do a little bit more. But I knew that you guys knew that. I knew that you knew that that was my opinion. And so I'm like, I don't really know that I need to talk about this. And then one fateful day, the review itself, the review in question, came across my For You page of its own accord. And so I watched it because there had been so much hullabaloo about it. Well, now I've just done way too much blush. Somewhere in between how it was before and how it is now is what I wanted. It's okay, we can fix this, we can fix this. Okay, I'm just gonna look a little bit sunburned, but that's okay. But anyway, I actually watched Ilana's review. I finally watched the review everybody said was way too harsh. And I was very surprised by how I ended up feeling out the other side. Not because I felt like it was too harsh, because I still stand by the fact that reviews are for readers, and as long as your review of the book is honest, it's not your responsibility to word your review in a constructive manner that the author might take well, right? Like, it's not your responsibility to do that for the author. I don't know that I want to do eye makeup, you guys. I'm feeling so lazy today. How do we feel if I just didn't do eye makeup? Would we hate that? Also, I'm not gonna do my hair. I'm not actually going anywhere. I'm just doing this for the video, and so sorry guys. Like I said, I didn't have the best day today, and I need more of like a hang out with the girls kind of vibe than like a formal polished video vibe, you know? Also, can you tell I was shopping having the Wicked collection on REM. Okay, that's a lot of lip for no eye makeup. Okay, actually, we're gonna do a more subtle lip than that. Okay, I'm also not in frame anymore. Whoopsie. So if I don't think it's possible for a review to be too harsh, then what was my problem with Ilana's review? There is an asterisk that I put on that statement, which is that as long as somebody is honest, then I don't think that there's anything wrong with a harsh review. But in my opinion, I don't think that this review is the most honest, and that's my problem with it. I do want to give a quick disclaimer though. Just a reminder, I have not actually read this book because it hasn't been released and I don't have access to an ARC. I did actually try to email the publisher to get one, but I guess 30,000 subscribers means nothing to them. Thank you guys for that, by the way. Crazy. I'm so excited. That's so cool. I'm always very, very grateful that you guys watch my silly little videos. And that was a joke about the publisher, by the way. I don't actually care. I just am saying that I don't have access to the book, so I am not speaking to the quality of this book at all. My point here is that I don't think we can put a lot of stock in this review because I don't think it's the most honest. But in order to explain why that is, we have to go through the review itself. The structure of this video is that she is reading the book and she just kind of has the phone set up and she pauses when she has thoughts and is filming herself, sharing those thoughts with the audience. And so she starts it out by giving some predictions.
Checking my ARC website earlier, and I saw that Haley Pham's new book, Just Friends, is available to download. So I'm going to attempt to read it. Attempt because I'm in a slump. I'll give you my opinion, whether or not it is objectively good, not whether or not I like it, because it is a second chance, and I historically don't like second chance. I'm interested to see what it's like. My prediction before we get into it, the writing will try to be reminiscent of Emily Henry, because I know she really loves Emily Henry and her writing. I know that the romance will be closed door. She does not like open door. Bummer. I think, for no reason other than my assumption, it's going to be a little more showing than telling. Don't kill me. Okay, I'm gonna start it now.
And a lot of these predictions are based off of what Haley's tastes are. That makes a lot of sense, right? Haley makes a lot of content surrounding books, and so if you know what her taste is in books, then it probably is pretty easy to predict some of how the book's gonna go down, right? But she throws a little asterisk in there where she says that she has this theory that we're gonna get a lot of telling instead of showing. And she says she can't really explain why she feels that way, but just that she does feel that way. I also wanna call out what she said about this being an objective review. So she's already admitting that she isn't sure that this book is gonna be for her because of the premise of it, but that she's going to be objectively judging whether or not it's a good book anyway. Remember that. And then she starts the book.
I'm still on chapter 1. There have been multiple sentences where you read them and you're like, oh, she definitely consulted a thesaurus. The feeling is personified in my stomach. One of my favorite ones. I force myself to perceive its beauty. I have to yield to a conglomerate of pedestrians. So far, I'm right about one prediction. Wanna be Emily Henry. I'm astonished by her forwardness.
Her first pause update, she says that she's still in chapter 1 and shares a good bit of feedback about the writing. She starts to talk about an overuse of big words and accuses Haley of using a thesaurus too much, which can happen. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure these words or these sentences merit this reaction. The feeling personified in my stomach, I actually think that that's kind of a fun way to word that sentence, because the word personified means to kind of grow into its own being or like become a person or being in and of itself. And so the idea of your emotion kind of becoming its own entity within you, like I like that sentence actually. The other ones she listed didn't bother me. I will say the conglomerate of pedestrians is a little bit strange, but if that's the only one, then I don't really know that this is fair critique. I'm not going to individually comment on that through the rest of the video, but she continues to bring this back up, and some of the words that she pulls as examples, I am just surprised that she considers to be words that are too pulled from a thesaurus-y or strange to be used. I'm not saying it's not fair. Like, if that's how she feels reading it, then that's how she feels reading it. I'm not necessarily saying that this is the part of the review that I think is dishonest. I am just saying I disagree with her with the example she's given. Having not read the book myself, and so not knowing if this is a problem throughout the book, book, she will consistently bring back up the words that are being used, and I almost always feel like they're perfectly valid words to use in a book and that they're not that strange. We just disagree on that, me and Ilana. But the other thing I want to call out from this beginning commentary is that she immediately says, I was right, my prediction was right. She's a wannabe Emily Henry. Pause, that's not what your prediction was. Your prediction was that it was going to be reminiscent of Emily Henry because Haley has talked about how much she likes Emily Henry. Your prediction wasn't that you thought it was going to be wannabe Emily Henry or like knockoff Emily Henry. That's a different thing to say. And it's a nuance of language, but I do think it's important when we get to my eventual point. But I digress. The review continues.
Page 2. Cue the traumatic thing that gives the character personality.
Whoa, hang on a minute. We're only on page 2? So she just said all of that about the writing and she's only read a page? I'm not gonna say anything about that yet, but hold on to that. Okay, so now might be the time to tell you that there are large swatches of this review. I do think is very fair and I don't really have that much to say on them. But I felt remiss, like if I'm gonna be critiquing her, I wanted to include the whole thing. If you just see a lot of the video going without me cutting in and giving commentary, that's why. It's because I don't wanna crop down her video to only the parts I had a problem with, because I feel like that makes it look way worse.
Yeah, I don't wanna sound like a cynic, but did she have an editor? Not to fix grammatical mistakes, although there have been a couple, but to fix, like, okay, if you have a specific phrase or sentence style, you're not supposed to repeat it a bunch of times, let alone twice on the same page. Mentions people going onto a boat, right? It was meant to hold 200 people, but became 1,000. Literally 2 paragraphs later, opening a convenience store and expanded to 2 locations, which later became 7. That's the same thing. You can't use that twice in the same page. Now that I've established I don't like the writing, and I don't think that the writing flows naturally. It feels very... Let me consult a thesaurus, why don't I? Stilted. The writing is very stilted. Stiff and self-conscious, or unnatural. That's how I would describe it. I'm going to try to overlook that as I continue, so I can comment on the actual romance, which is my favorite part of a book. I'll save critical thoughts about the writing and just focus on the romance from here on out.
So we're on page 2, and she's pretty much completely written off the writing of this book in its entirety. And once again, the example that she gives for what she's complaining about, I just don't have a problem with. Maybe that's just me, but I don't really feel like if I read these 2 sentences that she mentioned on the same page, that I would clock that they were phrased similarly. But she basically goes on to just write off the writing in its entirety and say, you know what, I don't like the writing. I've just made my peace with the fact that I don't like the writing, and so I'm gonna stop talking about it. Mind you, she's on page 2. I just don't think 2 pages is enough to have read to know how you feel about the writing of a whole entire book. If somebody is just a casual reader, then I definitely think if you're not vibing with the book, you're not vibing. And I do think 2 pages is enough to know if you like the narrative voice. And she does complain about the narrative voice a little bit, so there's part of me that thinks that that's what she means when she uses the word writing. But then she sometimes makes other comments when she's talking about the writing that imply that she knows that the word writing is more used as like an umbrella term for all of the craft and skill that goes into writing. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I just don't think 2 pages is enough to write it off like that. I don't think 2 pages is enough to know how you feel about the overarching quality of the book. If she was just talking about the narrative voice, it would be one thing, but anyway. And you might think I'm being nitpicky here, but I'm building to a point, right? But I'm gonna let the review play so that we can get to that point.
I lied, and back to talk about the writing. I should have known that the overuse of big vocab words was going to be here. Prevalent. Emphasize how dire the situation was. Effervescent smile. It's a lot, and it feels unnatural. I should have known, because months ago, I saw a video of hers back when she was still talking about books, but it was when she was transitioning into the pretentious phase of talking about books, where she said, oh, I just read this sentence in a book, and I learned a new word. I love when that happens, then I have to look up the word to know what it means. The word was banal, which I think is not a fancy word, it's just banal. She went through the 3 words that she had found in the book. When she got to banal, she said, and this one, banal. So lacking in originality as to be obvious and boring.
Whoa, a little bit of a pivot. So we were talking about the book, and now we're talking about Haley. Ilana has a moment where she's like, actually, I'm not done complaining about the writing, and fair enough, go off queen. But she goes on to say that she should have realized that the writing would be this chock full of big words when she saw a video a while back when Haley was in her pretentious phase of making book content, where she was talking about how much she loves learning new words from books. And one of the words that she had learned from a book was banal. Now, some of what I'm about to say is very much an implication, but I'm sure that you guys will agree with me watching it, that the implication of how she acts surrounding this is that she clearly thinks that Haley probably should have known that word already. Reads out what the definition of banal is, which is boring, simple, right? Again, the implication is that she thinks this either of Haley herself or of the book, and then goes on to make fun of Haley for mispronouncing the word banal and saying it banal. Now, don't get me wrong, if one of my friends said the word banal in front of me and they pronounced it banal, I would terrorize them. They would like not be safe in my home after doing that, the amount that I would make fun of them, but out of love. But specifically because it's mispronouncing it to rhyme with anal, like that is funny. She's not making fun of Haley in good fun, and she's not making fun of Haley with love, and she's not giggling about the fact that it sounds close to anal. She seems to be making fun of Haley for not knowing how the word banal was pronounced. Maybe I'm being the friend that's too woke right now, but it's one of my pet peeves when people make fun of somebody for not knowing something already, because not everybody has the same access to education. And so just because you have learned that already doesn't mean it's unfair for somebody to learn it now, or that makes them stupid. And it does kind of lead me to a place where I'm like, well, what do you want from the girl? Because you're making fun of her for learning this word from reading and being excited about that. You're also making fun of her for mispronouncing it. So your whole energy is about how she probably should have known that word already. But anytime she uses like a level 2 spelling word in this book, you clown on her for it. So what do you want from her? Do you want her to read at like a 3rd grade level and write at a 3rd grade level? Or do you want her to expand her vocabulary through reading and sometimes use those words in her writing? Which is it?
Me and Cinema Roll are editing right now. I have to tell you, I had a very interesting experience with my parents last night, because I was hanging out with them and I was telling them about what the video for this week was. And when I got to the part about the word banal, my dad was just really quiet through that whole thing. And at the end of it, he went, "Mare, I gotta be honest with you. That's how I thought it was pronounced. My dad thought it was pronounced banal." And the reason why I wanted to throw this insert in is not just because somebody in my real life made the same mistake, but because a lot of people are being very elitist and very rude to Haley. I've found out since filming, I didn't know this when I was filming, and saying that the reason why the book reads the way that it does and that she didn't know that word and didn't know how it was pronounced is because she dropped out of high school. Pause, we're making fun of people for that now? What happened to understanding that everybody's in a different life situation? Like, I thought we were all trying to be more accepting, not less. But anyway, the reason why I wanted to tell you about my dad is because my dad went to MIT. You could not say that man is uneducated, okay? He has a degree in electrical engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he's done a crossword daily for his whole entire life. And he's never let my mom win a game of Scrabble except recently, and we're genuinely worried it's a sign of dementia. He also has an MBA. He'd probably be mad at me for not mentioning that, but that's from Arizona State. So my dad is very educated. Okay, my dad's very educated. He's been very successful in his life, and he's very good with words. And he thought it was banal. I feel like it's a very understandable mistake. That's all I'm saying.
And not only that, but to, in the same breath, call Haley pretentious and then make fun of her for not knowing the word banal and then mispronouncing it. It's just like a little bit the pot calling the kettle black, I fear. You're being a little pretentious right now. And not only that, but we very much pivoted from critiquing the book to critiquing the author, and not for anything problematic. If you're critiquing the author for something offensive you find in a book, that's a very specific thing, and I do think that's fair. But I otherwise think that tearing into the author as a person when you're leaving a review is a bridge too far. If your review is focused around the book itself and all you talk about is the book, then I don't think there's a line where you can get too harsh. But once you start talking about the author, it's very different. She's just insulting her in the middle of this review. And so the first time I watched this, I thought maybe this was the part people were saying she was too harsh because she's going after Haley, not after the book. And again, it just kind of seems counterintuitive to call Haley pretentious and then make fun of her for not already knowing a word and learning it from reading, and then make fun of her for mispronouncing it. Also, English isn't everybody's first language, so it's not even always an education reason why people do that. Like, English is notoriously very difficult to pronounce. I mean, it is pretty much spelled like anal, just with a B, and so I can't exactly blame her for jumping to pronouncing it like anal with a B. Cannot stress enough, as funny as it is. And as much as I like, again, I would laugh if a friend said it in front of me, but that doesn't mean that I would actually think they're stupid. I think those are different things. But that's actually not my only issue with this review, so I'm gonna let it play out to the end, and then I'm gonna tell you guys why I'm saying that I don't think this is the most honest review I've ever seen.
And now we have the second traumatic thing for our male main character that's going to give him personality, because they will inevitably be very two-dimensional. Yay. Remember what I said earlier about wanting to be like Emily Henry and showing instead of telling, but how she's going to do the opposite and tell us instead of show us? Yeah, it's happening. We're in a flashback. And why do you, two-time state champion quarterback, have a fake football? Good to know. He is the two-time state champion quarterback. Wouldn't have known any other way. I feel like there are a lot of personal feelings that are being put into this book when they don't need to be. It kind of feels like she's complaining a little bit, minimizing other people's struggles because she had it worse. I don't mean to make your relationship with him sound easy, but at least you have a relationship to struggle with. Interesting. They just had a conversation about him and his struggles and what he's going through with his dad, and she made it all about herself. And earlier, she mentioned that there has to be some kind of accident and fight that happened, and that's why they're not friends anymore. And her great-aunt, grandma, whatever, says, "Why don't you apologize to him?" And she's like, "It's not that simple." Girl, if you were in the wrong and you haven't apologized after all of these years, you're wondering why he's not talking to you? I don't like this girl. I don't like her. This is moving really quickly, not in a good way. The pacing, it's very odd. He calls her a little bird. I don't like that. I'm really not enjoying this. Okay, I'm done with the book. Here's my review. It's not going to be a pretty one. I've spoken enough about the writing. I'm not going to keep talking about it because it's just going to piss me off more. When it comes to the characters, she is extremely unlikable. She's not a good person. She's not a good friend. He's barely in the book. You also don't get his point of view. I personally like dual point of view. You don't get really anything of him. He's not really there. The reason their relationship didn't work out in the first place was because of you guessed it, miscommunication. Was that resolved? Not until the last chapter. So this whole second chance relationship that they're rebuilding and getting to know each other again, and didn't really happen that much. There was barely any build-up. They're just, oh yay, we're together. Oh, and look, here's proof that we could have stayed together before. Oh no, we wasted all these years. Maybe you shouldn't have stayed together. There's also a big thing with grief in the book. I feel like that really overtook the plot. It's supposed to be a romance book. There was little to no romance. There was little to no communication. There was little to no resolution. It was just a lot about her grieving and being selfish and blaming it on the grief. Oh, I'm a bad person because I'm mourning. Oh, I was mean to you and I never apologized to you for this thing that happened. But it's your fault. It's your fault because right now I'm grieving. There was no chemistry. None. Sorry. No chemistry between these characters. She was insufferable. I can see the vision. I can see what she wanted to do. She tried to do. Sorry, let me use bigger words. What she tried to execute. It was very poorly done. This did not read well. I would not call this a romance book. It had middle grade writing, very little plot, and the romance was bad. Sorry. Am I being harsh? Yes. There are so many authors who write fantastic books and spend a long time on them and get the right editors to make it good and then have to work to get an agent and a publishing deal. And this just fell in her lap because people like her videos on the internet. Where was her team? Why did nobody tell her that the writing wasn't good? I'm being very harsh. I understand that. I apologize for how rude this is coming across. If you get the opportunity because of this thing and you take it, sure, 100% go for it. At least give a good product at the end. That's all I ask for. I'm also aware that I'm not an author. I never claimed to be an author. I can't write. I suck at writing, but I'm a reader. So I can tell you my opinion from reading it. I know that my opinion doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but if someone were to ask me, I would not recommend this book. Sorry.
So, for the most part, when she was actually critiquing the book, is she being harsh? Yes, but as I've already said enough, can't be too harsh if you're focusing on the book and that is how you feel. However, when she got to the end and she started to talk about how Haley was an influencer and so many people fight so hard to get a book deal and this just landed in Haley's lap because she already has an audience, and she goes on to say, if you get the opportunity, take it, but just give a good product. That's all I'm asking for. That was really the moment where I was like, okay, so let's talk about it. Book reviewer to book reviewer, co-workers, if you will. It feels to me like Ilana didn't like Haley Pham already and already felt like she didn't deserve her book deal and went into her read of the book searching for the evidence of that instead of actually giving it a fair chance. And even if that is what she did, I wouldn't have a problem with it as long as she had just said that. There's nothing wrong. Well, I maybe shouldn't say there's nothing wrong with. You might alienate some people if you do what I'm about to describe, which maybe is why she didn't do it. But if you start out your video and you say, hey guys, I don't like Haley Pham and I don't really think she deserved this book deal, and so I'm gonna do a little bit of a hate read and I'm gonna be a little bit of a hater, I actually think that that's significantly more ethical than lying about whether or not you're being objective. Because I think it's very, very obvious when you go and you re-watch this review through the lens of knowing that she was frustrated that Haley got this book deal and that it landed in her lap, where there's so many people out there fighting so hard to get their own book deals, then all of a sudden what you see is somebody who went into the book expecting it to be wannabe Emily Henry, and before even opening it said, I feel like she's gonna tell us more than she shows us anything. And then within a page was like, yep, hate the writing, knew it, hate the writing. And that's why I said the nuance of language between reminiscent of Emily Henry and wannabe Emily Henry is so important. Because if you're just saying you expect her to be inspired by Emily Henry, that's one thing. But her then getting a page, one page, into reading the book and immediately saying, I knew it, she's a wannabe Emily Henry, means that that's actually how she thought about it ahead of time. She just said it nicer the first time she said it, meaning that she went into the book expecting her to be a wannabe Emily Henry, to tell more than she shows, and to overuse big words because she talked about this TikTok that she saw of Haley's that she clearly didn't like, that involved her talking about the book she had learned while she was reading. For all I know, all of these critiques are fair of the book. I have not read the book myself, but I will say, having now watched the review, I get why this reviewer was getting backlash. A, because she directly attacked Haley in the middle of it for no reason, and was just openly making fun of her. There's no other way to frame it. But also, the combination of all these other things lead me to believe that she went into the book wanting to look for problems with it instead of actually just read it and see how she felt about it. And so that's why I have a problem with it, is because I don't think that that's honest. If you already don't like somebody and you know you're gonna rip into them and you don't disclose that ahead of time, then you're misleading your audience into believing you're trying to be objective and that the book actually is that bad to merit that kind of energy from you. And I think that's part of what people were picking up on, is that there just is an energy in this video. She doesn't like this book to a degree that I think is abnormal. And especially going back to the fact that she framed it as an objective review. And she said in the beginning, certain things about the premise make her feel like she's not going to personally like the book, but that she's going to objectively judge if it's a good book or not. But she's not doing an objective judgment at all. I have not myself read the book, and other people who have read it have had similar criticisms. So it is entirely possible that some of what Ilana's saying here is true about the book. But especially when she was talking about the overuse of big words and the fact that it feels like Haley consulted a thesaurus a lot while she was writing, every time she gave an example, I was like, I don't really feel like that's a crazy word to use. Like prevalent? Am I crazy? Like, I feel like prevalent is a perfectly normal word to include in a book. Dire was another one. I'm like, yeah, are they used in colloquial speech that often? No, but I feel like if you read a lot, you see words like that used a lot. Writing usually uses slightly bigger words and slightly more vocab than we talk colloquially. It's just when somebody goes insano mode with that, or that it doesn't flow, but all of the words that she listed in the video I really thought were fine, except for effervescent and specifically the use of conglomerate. So that's where I'm saying, like, it just didn't feel the most honest and it didn't feel the most in good faith to me. It felt like she already didn't like Haley and she already felt like she didn't deserve a book deal, and she went into the book with that idea in her mind, and then she read it and she was looking for the problems with with it. And I don't think that's honest. And also her just attacking Haley in the middle. Those are my two real issues with this review. But I don't just want to talk about the review. I also want to talk about her response to the backlash, because Ilana did get some backlash on TikTok for this video, and she had some people telling her she was being way too harsh. And she responded to that. I'm just gonna play her video in its entirety, and then I'm gonna tell you how I feel about it.
I'm just using this comment as an example. Don't be mean to this person. I don't know her. But there's been multiple people that are saying that I'm being a bully because I posted a negative review about a book written by a popular YouTuber, a book that I did not enjoy reading, and a book that objectively was not well written. I said in the video that it was a very harsh review, and I apologized if anything came across as rude, which clearly it did for some people. But saying that I'm a bully for not liking the book and for saying that it was poorly written, I don't know about that. Bullying is when somebody who's in a position of power, there's a power imbalance there, uses repeated, intentional, harmful words or actions to cause harm to the other person. This definition says the use of force, coercion, hurtful, teasing comments, or threats in order to abuse, aggressively dominate, or intimidate one or more others, often repeated and habitual. When people repeatedly and intentionally use words or actions against someone or a group of people to cause distress and risk to their well-being. These actions are usually done by people who have more power, influence, or power over someone else, or who want to make someone else feel less powerful or helpless. There's no power imbalance here, especially not on my side. If anything, it would be if she were to say something mean about me. I didn't even say anything mean about her. I don't know her. There's also no intentional harm being caused. Could I have been a little bit nicer? Yeah, 100%. And I said that in the video. But it's a review. I'm not saying that she's a sucky person. I don't know her. I'm allowed to have my own opinion about a book that I read. If you want to read the book and form your own opinion, by all means, go right ahead. I didn't say that nobody should ever read this book. I said that if I was specifically asked, I would not recommend it. So I understand people being upset with how harsh it was, but I don't think calling me a bully, I don't know if that's the right word to use.
I, again, just want to say how crazy I think it is that she accused Haley of being pretentious. Her energy in these videos is just very, I'm smarter than you, I know better than you. She's giving this vibe of, it's not as common these days, but back when I was in high school, there was kind of this trend of like brutal honesty. And these people who would be rude, but then they would say, I'm just being honest, I'm just being honest. Oh, you can't handle honesty? And it's like, well, again, first of all, I'm not 100% sure that she is being the most honest. I think she doesn't like Haley, and I think that affected her opinion of the book a lot. But not only that, she feels like the type of person who would say something to you, and if you told her that it hurt your feelings, she would respond with, well, I'm just being honest, that's a you problem. And it's like, if that's how you want to be, then that's how you want to be, but it doesn't always make you the most friends. You can be kind and still be honest. You can share how you feel, but you can word it in a way that's kind. And again, I don't know that she necessarily needed to do that with her critique of the book itself, but I do think her going after Haley is a little bit much. Let's go through her response video and actually talk about the different pieces of it. So she starts out by going ham on the dictionary definition of the word bullying and saying that it isn't possible for her to bully Haley because Haley is a much bigger creator than her, and so she's punching up. Okay, that's all well and good. I think this is a nuance of language though. I think the point people are making is that you're being really mean to Haley, potentially for unjustified reasons. We already have crazy enough fan culture online, and we are kind of heading in a direction where there's this attitude that if somebody has a platform, then anything you say about them is merited because they put themselves out there. I do think that the concept of power imbalance and how big somebody's platform is when they call somebody out and all of that, I do think all of that is important conversation. And I do think that if Haley were to respond to this, she would be in the wrong. A, because it's just a negative review of a book and it's always kind of wrong for an author to respond to that. But B, because Ilana is a significantly smaller creator than her. And so Haley hasn't responded, and I think it should stay that way, and I think that that's smart. But that doesn't mean that you can't be mean to Haley in a way that's off-putting to people who are watching your videos. Just because she's a bigger creator than you doesn't mean that you're not capable of being rude to her. And maybe the proper word for that isn't bullying, but this feels like a nuance of language. It feels like we're harping on whether or not what you were doing is called bullying, as opposed to whether or not you were mean to her or responding to the fact that you were. Which she then goes on to say, I wasn't even mean to her, and tries to claim she didn't say anything anything about Haley. I don't think she watched her own video back before making this response, because she fully did. She fully pivoted in the middle of her book review to make fun of Haley as a person for a second or two, and then pivoted back into talking about the book. Like, you called her pretentious, and then you made fun of her for not knowing the word banal, and then you made fun of her for mispronouncing it, and then you implied that you think that she is banal. That is all making fun of Haley and being mean to her and being rude to her and saying something about her as a person. The last thing I want to say about all of this is that, and fair warning, this might be controversial, the same principle of reviews are for readers applies to the comment sections of a creator's video once they get to a big enough size. There reaches a point where comments are for viewers. Responding to viewers who are giving you feedback about something that they didn't like about your video is the same thing as an author responding to somebody who gave them a 1-star review. If people are commenting under the video and saying, yo, this was kind of off-putting, this was kind of mean, I'm not sure I want to follow you if this is what your book reviews are like, that's their prerogative. The same that it's a reader's prerogative to not like a book. She kind of said, if my reviews aren't for you, then whatever. I just think, generally speaking, creators responding to negative critique like that is the same thing and should be thought of as the same thing as an author responding to a 1-star review. A viewer is allowed to watch your content and not like it. They're allowed to do that. And they're allowed to share that feedback with you or with other viewers. And unless somebody is taking it way too far or trying to actually harass you or dox you or anything like that, unless somebody's doing something like that, then that's their prerogative. And they are allowed to do that. And I think we should have the same energy towards those responses that we do towards authors who complain about 1-star reviews or respond back to the people who leave them. Your videos are your art. The people who didn't like this video are giving you feedback on art that you made. And yes, they're not paying you for it, but TikTok is paying you for it through the Creator Fund. And you get money from the Creator Fund from ads that viewers are watching on TikTok. The same that I get money from AdSense on YouTube that comes from ads that viewers are watching. So while the viewers might not be paying you directly with money out of their bank account, they are in a way paying you. And so you are opening yourself up to criticism, the same that authors open themselves up to criticism when they publish a book and sell it for money. You not being able to take that criticism is the same thing as an author not being able to take negative criticism. That's all I'm saying. And overarchingly, I just feel like the energy in these videos is very off-putting. And I feel like it's fair for viewers to point that out to you. And to say that it's giving a little bit mean girl energy, it's giving brutal honesty, it's giving rude. I'm gonna say something, and I'm not sure if this is gonna be me being too harsh or me taking things too far, but she responded to a comment under her response where somebody says, people don't realize that not everybody who likes to read can write a book. People also don't always realize that not everybody who likes to read is qualified to objectively analyze the quality of a book. Are you mad at me? I said it, okay, I said it and I meant it. Not everybody who talks about books online is qualified to give objective reviews, and that's okay. That's okay, because there's nothing wrong with giving a subjective review, because if the viewer knows your taste and they like your taste and they find that they like a lot of the books that you like, then if you subjectively say you like a book or don't like it, then that does inform their purchase and that's valid. But I think there's a lot of readers out there who think they're better at judging writing than they are. And I have learned this through talking about writing extensively online, and some of the backlash that I have gotten over the years of some of the things that I've said about different books. A good example I can pull from really recently is Powerless. There were a few Powerless fans in the comments under that video who were saying that just because I didn't like the book doesn't mean the writing was bad. They liked it. Okay, well, just because you liked the book doesn't mean the writing is good, though. Me, as I was critiquing her for responding to critique, and now I'm responding to it, and I actually was responding to people in the comments on this. Maybe this is just my hypocrisy, right? That is a little bit different to me, because I'm not responding to people saying that they don't like something about the video. I'm responding to somebody who disagrees with a point that I made. I do that all the time. If somebody just disagrees with a point that I made in a video and we're having a debate, then we're having a debate. But if somebody were to say, hey, I don't really like that you don't put a lot of edits in the video, if I were to respond back and be like, then it's just not for you, click out, like that's what I think is uncouth. You know what I mean? But anyway, writing is an art, but it's also a skill. And much like any other form of art, there is a technique to it. Judging that technique takes knowing the technique. and not everybody knows the technique, so then they struggle to judge the technique. And I think that's a lot of what's leading to people having this attitude. Not that I'm saying that Ilana had this attitude specifically, but we just see this online all the time, that there are people who think that if they like a book, then that meant that it was good, and if they don't like a book, then that meant that it was bad. And they really struggle with the idea that their taste is not actually a marker of whether or not something was good or bad. And so going back to people commenting under my Powerless video and saying, well, just because you didn't like it doesn't mean the writing is bad because I liked it. Well, you might have liked the book, but I gave very concrete examples and reasons about why I was saying the writing was bad, like the craft of writing, the technique of writing. I'm not even saying that Ilana is one of those people. I'm just saying I did not agree with a lot of the examples that she used for some of the critiques. That doesn't mean that she's not correct about it. Again, cannot stress enough, I have not read this book myself, so I have no idea if it's any good or not. But I don't think any of that matters. I actually don't even think that's relevant to this conversation. The question is, was this an objective review? And I think the answer is no. I think she had this preconceived notion that Haley didn't deserve her book deal and was looking for evidence of that in the book instead of actually just reading it and giving it a chance. But I haven't read the book myself, and so all of this critique could be valid. But even if the critique was valid, I don't think this is an objective review. And most of the things that she commented on were subjective opinions. And I wish more people understood what it actually meant to objectively judge the quality of the writing in a book, because there's just a lot of people on book internet who don't know what that means. I guess I'll just cap it off with a little bit of unsolicited advice, not just for Ilana, but for anybody who wants to make book related content online. You get what you give in this world, and you especially get what you give when it comes to your audience. When you talk like this in your videos, you attract people who talk the same way, who think the same way, who act the same way. And so you cultivate an audience of people who are very harsh and rude in their language. And as a result, they are going to speak to you that way. And if you ever yourself end up putting out a book, or when you're seeing some of the critique coming in from your audience and all of that, like if you cultivate an audience of people who are very cutthroat and very harsh, then they are going to be that way with you as well. And I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me at all. I just found myself very surprised when I watched the review itself, how much I agreed with the criticism that she maybe took things a little bit too far, but specifically with attacking Haley. And also that I just didn't really feel like the review actually was that objective. But I'm going to leave it there. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This turned out to be a much more interesting discussion online than I thought it was going to be when I first saw the age-old "can reviews be too harsh" conversation circulating again. So let me know what you guys think. I love you, and thanks again for the 30,000 subscribers. I appreciate it more than I could ever tell you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!